What if everything you thought you knew about your own heart turned out to be a carefully constructed lie? Rebecca Coleman had always believed she understood love. She'd married her college sweetheart at 23. She'd raised two beautiful children in a house with a white picket fence. She'd packed lunches, attended soccer games, volunteered at bake sales, and built a life that looked from the outside like the American dream. For 26 years, she'd believed that was enough, that comfort and routine and shared history equaled love. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? Then she met Daniel. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in October, in the most ordinary way possible. Rebecca was at the farmer's market, selecting apples for a pie she'd promised to bring to her book club. She reached for a Honeycrisp at the same moment someone else did. Their hands collided. She looked up, ready to apologize, and found herself staring into the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. "Sorry," he said, pulling his hand back with a sheepish smile. "You go ahead. No, please." Rebecca's voice came out softer than she intended. "I insist." He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he spent a lot of time outdoors. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. There was paint under his fingernails, green and blue, like sea glass. "How about we both take one?" he suggested, his smile widening. "Plenty to go around." Rebecca found herself smiling back. "That seems fair." They stood there for a moment longer than necessary, neither quite ready to walk away. Then he extended his hand. "Daniel Crawford, Rebecca Coleman." His handshake was firm, warm. When he released her hand, she felt the absence of his touch like a cold breeze. "Do you come here often?" Daniel asked, then immediately winced. God, that sounded like the worst pickup line in history. "I just meant I haven't seen you here before, and I'm here every week." Rebecca laughed, surprising herself. When was the last time she'd laughed like that? Light and genuine and unguarded. "I usually send my husband," she said, and the word felt heavy in her mouth. "But he's out of town this week." Something flickered across Daniel's face, disappointment, maybe, or understanding. He recovered quickly. "Well, if you need any recommendations, I know this market like the back of my hand. I'm a chef. Or I was. Now I mostly paint, but old habits die hard." They talked for 20 minutes. About food and art and the weather. About nothing and everything. When Rebecca finally looked at her watch, she was shocked to discover how much time had passed. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Of course." Daniel hesitated, then pulled a card from his wallet. "I'm teaching a painting class at the community center on Thursday nights. Beginners welcome. If you're ever interested." Rebecca took the card. Their fingers brushed again, and she felt something electric shoot up her arm. She tucked the card into her purse quickly, as if hiding evidence. "Thank you," she said. Maybe I will. She didn't go to the class that Thursday, or the next. But she kept the card. She'd take it out sometimes when she was alone, running her thumb over the embossed letters of his name. Daniel Crawford. Even his name felt like a secret. 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday evening, Rebecca found herself standing outside the community center. Her husband, Tom, was working late again. Her daughter, Emma, was away at college. Her son, Jake, was spending the night at a friend's house. The house had felt too empty, too quiet, too suffocating. She walked inside before she could change her mind. The class was small, maybe 8 people, all ages, all skill levels. Daniel stood at the front of the room in front of an easel, demonstrating brush techniques. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Rebecca," he said warmly, "you came." "I came," she confirmed, her heart racing. That night she painted for the first time in her life. She was terrible at it. Her trees looked like blobs. Her sky was streaky and uneven. But Daniel moved through the room, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. When he stood behind her, reaching around to guide her hand, she could smell his cologne. Cedar and something citrusy. Clean and masculine and completely different from Tom's sharp aftershave. "Like this," Daniel murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Loose strokes. Don't overthink it." Rebecca couldn't speak. Every nerve in her body was aware of his proximity, of the way his hand covered hers, of the way her pulse hammered in her throat. When the class ended, everyone began packing up. Rebecca cleaned her brushes slowly, deliberately, not ready to leave yet. Daniel approached her, hands in his pockets. "You did great for your first time," he said. "You're a terrible liar." KU was smiling. "Okay, you did. Adequately." His eyes twinkled. "But everyone starts somewhere. Are you coming back next week?" Rebecca knew she shouldn't. Knew this was dangerous territory. Knew that the way her stomach flipped when he looked at her meant something she wasn't ready to name. "Yes," she heard herself say, "I'll be back." And she was. Every Thursday for the next 2 months. She told Tom she'd joined a book club. The lie came easily, which should have bothered her more than it did. The painting classes became the highlight of her week. She and Daniel would talk during breaks about his late wife who died 5 years ago, about his grown daughter in Seattle, about the restaurant he used to own before he sold it to pursue art. Rebecca found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. Her fear that she'd wasted her life being who everyone else needed her to be. Her suspicion that Tom was having an affair, though she had no proof. Her loneliness that felt like drowning. Daniel listened. Really listened. Not with advice or judgment, just with presence. With those warm brown eyes that made her feel seen for the first time in years. After class one night in December, as they were the last two in the room, Daniel turned to her and said, "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Outside of class." Rebecca's breath caught. This was the line. This was the moment where fantasy became reality, where innocent became something else. "I can't," she whispered. "I know." Daniel's voice was soft, sad. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked." But as Rebecca drove home that night, her hands trembling on the steering wheel, she realized something that terrified her. She wanted to say yes. How do you live with wanting something you can't have? December turned into January. Rebecca stopped going to the painting class. It was the right thing to do, the safe thing, but God, it hurt. The house felt emptier than ever. Tom worked constantly, and when he was home, they barely spoke. They'd become experts at existing in parallel, occupying the same space without ever really touching. Emma came home for winter break. And for 2 weeks, the house was full again. Full of her daughter's laughter and friends and late-night conversations. Rebecca threw herself into being a mother, baking cookies and organizing movie nights and pretending everything was fine. But at night, alone in her bed while Tom slept beside her, Rebecca thought about Daniel, about his smile, about the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, about the life she might have lived if she'd met him 27 years ago instead of Tom, on New Year's Eve. Tom told her he had to work. An emergency at the office. Emma was at a party with friends. Rebecca found herself alone at midnight, watching the ball drop on TV. Drinking champagne that tasted like regret. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. ***. Happy New Year, Rebecca. I hope this year brings you everything you're looking for. Daniel ***. She stared at the message for a long time. Then, before she could stop herself, she replied, ***, how did you get my number? ***, his response came quickly. ***, you put it on the class roster for emergencies. I know I shouldn't have used it. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. Rebecca's hands shook as she typed. I've been thinking about you too. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Can I call you? She should say no. Should delete the message. Should block the number and pretend this never happened. Instead, she typed yes. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. She answered on the first ring. Hi, Daniel's voice came through, warm and tentative. Hi, she breathed. I miss you in class. Everyone does. My students keep asking when the lady with the terrible trees is coming back. Rebecca laughed despite herself. That's a terrible way to convince me to return. I know. I'm out of practice with this. A pause. With caring about someone? The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Daniel, I know you're married, he interrupted gently. I know this is complicated. I'm not asking for anything, Rebecca. I needed you to know that meeting you changed something in me. Woke something up I thought was dead. Even if nothing ever comes of it, I needed you to know that. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. You changed something in me too. They talked until 2 a.m. About everything and nothing. About their fears and regrets and dreams they'd buried. When they finally hung up, Rebecca felt more alive than she had in years. It became a pattern. They'd text throughout the day, nothing inappropriate, just small observations and shared thoughts. They'd call late at night when the house was quiet. It was emotional infidelity, Rebecca knew, even if it was never physical. But she couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. In February, Emma went back to college. Jake was busy with basketball and friends. Tom got a promotion that required even more travel. And Rebecca felt herself drifting further from the life she'd built, towards something unknown and terrifying and exhilarating. One evening in March, Daniel texted her. I'm having a small showing of my work at a gallery downtown this Saturday. I know it's asking a lot, but I'd really like you to be there. Rebecca sat with the message for hours. Going to the gallery felt different than phone calls and texts. It felt real, public, like a choice she couldn't take back. She told Tom she was having dinner with an old college friend. Another lie. They were piling up now, becoming a foundation she was building without quite realizing it. The gallery was small and intimate, walls lined with Daniel's paintings. They were stunning landscapes and seascapes and abstract pieces that seemed to capture emotion in color and light. Rebecca moved through the space slowly, taking it all in. Then she saw it. A painting in the back corner, smaller than the others. It was a woman sitting alone at a kitchen table, sunlight streaming through a window, illuminating her face. The woman looked peaceful but melancholy, present but somehow far away, Rebecca knew. With absolute certainty that it was her. I hope you don't mind. Daniel's voice came from behind her. You inspired it. That first day at the farmer's market. The way the light hit your face when you smiled. She turned to face him. He was wearing a suit navy blue, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked different, more polished. But his eyes were the same, warm, honest, full of things he wasn't saying. It's beautiful. Rebecca whispered, So are you. The words were simple, sincere, and they broke something open inside her. Daniel, I know. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm not asking you to blow up your life. I just need you to know how I feel. I need you to know that you're not alone in this. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted. But I know I've never felt this way about anyone. Not even my late wife, and I loved her. This is different. This is ... terrifying, Rebecca finished. He smiled sadly. Terrifying. They stood there, inches apart, in a crowded gallery surrounded by strangers. And Rebecca realized she was standing at a crossroads. She could walk away. Go home to Tom and her safe, comfortable, loveless marriage. Pretend this never happened. Or she could take one step forward. Into the unknown. Into possibility. Before she could decide, her phone rang. Tom's name flashed on the screen. The spell broke. Have to take this, she said, stepping away. Rebecca, where are you? Tom's voice was clipped, annoyed. I thought you were having dinner. We just finished. I'm heading home now. Well, hurry up. I need you to find that file from the tax attorney. The blue folder. Not I miss you. Not how was your evening. Just orders. Tasks. Okay, Rebecca said numbly. I'll be home soon. She hung up and looked at Daniel. He was watching her with an expression that made her chest ache. You should go, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Don't be. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture so tender it made her want to cry. You have nothing to apologize for. Rebecca left the gallery and drove home in a daze. When she walked into her house, this house she'd lived in for 23 years, it felt like a museum, full of artifacts from a life that no longer fit. Tom was in his study on his laptop. He barely looked up when she came in. "Did you find it?" he asked. "Find what?" "The blue folder. I just texted you." Rebecca hadn't checked her phone. "Not yet. I'll look for it." She went through the motions, found the folder, brought it to him. He grunted his thanks and went back to his screen. Rebecca stood in the doorway, watching her husband. This man she'd built a life with. This man who barely saw her anymore. "Tom," she said. When was the last time you asked me how I was?" He looked up, confused. "What?" "When was the last time you asked me about my day? My thoughts, my feelings?" Tom's brow furrowed. "Rebecca, I'm in the middle of something. Can we do this later?" "We never do it later. We never do it at all. What's gotten into you?" Rebecca stared at him, at this stranger wearing her husband's face, and she realized something that should have been obvious years ago. They'd stopped being partners a long time ago. Maybe they'd never really been partners at all. "Nothing," she said finally. "Never mind." Went upstairs, climbed into bed fully clothed, and let the tears come. What happens when you finally admit that the life you've been living isn't the life you want? The next few weeks were a blur. Rebecca went through the motions of her daily life, grocery shopping, cleaning, book club, but she felt like a ghost haunting her own existence. She and Daniel still texted, but less frequently. They both knew they were standing at the edge of something dangerous. Then, in early April, everything changed. Rebecca was doing laundry when she found a receipt in Tom's jacket pocket. Dinner for two at an expensive restaurant downtown. On a night he'd told her he was working late. Her hands trembled as she searched his other pockets. Found more receipts. Hotel rooms. Flowers. A jewelry store. She sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of her husband's affair, and felt strangely calm, almost relieved. Because now she knew. Now she had permission to feel what she'd been feeling when Tom came home that evening. Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen table with the receipts spread out in front of her. He froze when he saw them. "Rebecca, how long?" Her voice was steady, cold. "It's not what you think. How long?" Tom's shoulders sagged. 2 years. 2 years? While she'd been packing his lunches and doing his laundry and keeping his house. While she'd been drowning in loneliness and blaming herself for being ungrateful. Who is she? Someone from work. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Tom ran a hand through his hair. "Her name is Amanda. She's an associate at the firm. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." But it did happen. For 2 years it happened. "Are you having an affair too?" The question came out defensive, accusatory. Rebecca thought about Daniel, about the texts and phone calls and the way her heart raced when she saw his name. "No, but I wanted to." The admission hung in the air. Tom laughed bitterly. "Well, at least we're both honest now, are we? Have we been honest about anything in the last decade? We're roommates, Tom. We haven't been a real couple in years." He didn't argue. Couldn't argue. Because they both knew it was true. "So what do we do now?" Tom asked quietly. Rebecca looked at this man she'd promised forever to. This man who'd given her 2 beautiful children and a comfortable life and absolutely nothing of his. "Heart, I want a divorce," she said. The word felt foreign in her mouth, heavy but also freeing. Tom's face went pale. "Rebecca, don't be rash. We can work through this. Counseling. We can try what? To go back to pretending. I'm done pretending, Tom. I'm done living half a life." "What about the kids?" "The kids are adults. They'll be upset, but they'll understand. Maybe they already do." Tom stared at her for a long moment. Then quietly, "Is there someone else?" "For you?" Rebecca thought about lying. But she'd had enough of lies. "There could be," she admitted. "But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I deserve more than this. We both do. Tom nodded slowly. Okay, okay, if that's what you want, it is. They sat in silence, the marriage they'd built for 26 years crumbling around them like a house of cards. And Rebecca felt for the first time in so long like she could breathe. The next few months were hard. The legal process was exhausting. Telling Emma and Jake was heartbreaking. Emma cried. Jake got angry. But eventually, they came around. Eventually. They admitted they'd seen the cracks for years. Tom moved out in June, took half the furniture and most of his clothes and left the rest for Rebecca to figure out. The house felt cavernous without him, but also lighter, fresher, like opening windows after a long winter. Rebecca didn't contact Daniel during the divorce proceedings. It felt important to do this on her own. To prove to herself that she was choosing freedom, not just choosing another man, but on the day the divorce was finalized in September. She found herself pulling out her phone and scrolling to his name. They hadn't spoken in 5 months. He might have moved on, met someone else, forgotten about the married woman from painting class. She typed a message before she could overthink it. Asterisk hi, it's Rebecca. Are you still teaching that class? 3 dots appeared almost immediately, Rebecca. God, it's good to hear from you. Yes, I'm still teaching. Thursdays at 7. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. I'll see you there. Asterisk that Thursday. Rebecca walked into the community center for the first time in almost a year. The room looked the same. The smell of paint and turpentine. The easels arranged in a semicircle. But everything felt different. Daniel was at the front of the room setting up. When he saw her, he stopped. Just stopped and stared. Rebecca crossed the room slowly. When she reached him, she held up her left hand. Her ring finger was bare. Hi, she said softly. Hi, he breathed. I'm sorry I disappeared. I had to figure some things out. Did you? Figure them out? I think so. She smiled. Turns out I'm a terrible painter, but a pretty good starter over. Daniel laughed, his eyes bright. I'd like to hear about it. All of it. If you're willing to share, I am. But first, I have a question. Anything but offer for coffee. Is it still on the table? Daniel's face broke into the warmest smile she'd ever seen. Rebecca Coleman, I would love to get coffee with you. It's Rebecca Porter now. I took back my maiden name. Even better. He held out his hand. Shall we? Rebecca took his hand, feeling the same electric spark she'd felt that first day at the farmer's market. But this time, there was no guilt. No fear. Just possibility. They walked out of the community center together into the cool September evening. Rebecca didn't know where this would lead. Didn't know if she and Daniel would last a month or a year or forever. But for the first time in her adult life, she was choosing with her whole heart. Not out of obligation or fear or habit, but out of genuine, terrifying, exhilarating desire. Can you rebuild yourself after everything you thought you were has been taken apart? 6 months later, Rebecca stood in Daniel's art studio, a converted barn on the outskirts of town, surrounded by windows that let in floods of natural light. She was working on a painting of her own, one she'd been developing slowly over weeks. It was abstract, full of bold colors and sweeping strokes. Nothing like the timid, careful paintings she'd made a year ago. Daniel was across the room working on a commission. But he looked up every so often to watch her. Not to correct or instruct, just to witness, to appreciate, to be present. You've gotten so much better, he said during a break, coming to stand behind her. Look at that. Confident, brave. I had a good teacher. Rebecca leaned back against him, feeling his arms wrap around her waist. It still felt new. Still felt like something she might wake up from. You had courage, Daniel corrected. I just gave you space to find it. They'd been dating officially for 4 months now, taking it slow, learning each other. Rebecca had introduced him to Emma and Jake over Christmas, nervous as a teenager bringing home a boyfriend. Her kids had been guarded at first, protective of their mother, suspicious of this stranger. But Daniel had been patient, kind, had asked about their lives and listened to their answers. By the end of the visit, even Jake was warming up to him. "Mom seems happy," Emma had said before she left. Like, really happy. "I don't remember the last time I saw her like this." It was true. Rebecca felt lighter than she had in decades. Yes, there were hard days. Days when she doubted her choices. Days when she missed the familiarity of her old life, even if she didn't miss Tom. But mostly, she felt free. Like she'd been holding her breath for 26 years and finally exhaled. "I got an email from the gallery today," Daniel said, releasing her and moving to his laptop. "They want to do another showing in May, and they asked if you'd be interested in submitting a piece." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Me, I'm not time, barely. You're talented. More than you give yourself credit for." He pulled up the email and showed her. Sure enough, the curator had specifically mentioned Rebecca's work, which she'd apparently seen when visiting Daniel's studio. "I don't know," Rebecca said uncertainly. "You don't have to decide now. Just think about it." He kissed her forehead. "But I think you should do it. I think you're ready." Later that evening, they made dinner together in Daniel's kitchen, simple pasta with fresh vegetables from the farmer's market where they'd met. It had become their tradition, cooking together on weekends, talking and laughing and moving around each other with increasing ease. "Can I ask you something?" Rebecca said as they sat down to eat. "Always. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met at a different time? Before I was married? Before your wife passed?" Daniel considered the question. "Sometimes, but honestly, I don't think we would have been right for each other back then. You hadn't lived yet, hadn't discovered who you were outside of being someone's wife and mother, and I was so focused on my career, I barely paid attention to my own marriage. We needed to become the people we are now before we could appreciate each other." That's very philosophical. That's very true. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Everything you went through, the loneliness, the divorce, the pain, it brought you here. To this moment. Would you trade it?" Rebecca thought about the question. Really thought about it? All those years of feeling invisible. Of slow death by 1,000 small neglects. Of waking up one day and not recognizing herself. "No," she said finally, "I wouldn't trade it. Because you're right. I had to lose myself to find myself. And I like who I found." Daniel smiled. "I like who you found too." They finished dinner and moved to the living room where a fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Daniel had a collection of vinyl records, and he put on something soft and jazzy. They sat together on the couch, Rebecca's head on his shoulder, his arm around her. "I love you," Daniel said quietly. It was the first time either of them had said it. Rebecca's breath caught. She lifted her head to look at him. "I love you too," she whispered. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Soft and slow and full of promise, when they pulled apart, Rebecca felt tears on her cheeks. But they weren't sad tears. They were the tears of someone who'd been holding on so tightly for so long that finally letting go felt like release. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me. For being patient. For showing me what love can be when it's real. Thank you for being brave enough to want it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn. Outside, snow had begun to fall, covering the world in white. Inside, they were warm, safe. Together, Rebecca thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Standing in a farmer's market, reaching for an apple, believing her life was settled and predictable and over. She thought about how one unexpected moment, one collision of hands, one warm smile, one surprising connection had shattered everything she thought she knew about love. And she realized that shattering wasn't always destruction. Sometimes it was demolition, clearing away the old and broken to make room for something new. Sometimes the surprise wasn't that everything fell apart. The surprise was what you built in its place. Rebecca snuggled closer to Daniel, listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft rhythm of his breathing. She didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if they'd get married or just stay like this. Didn't know if her kids would ever fully accept him. Or if she'd ever stop feeling guilty about the choices she'd made. But she knew this. She was living authentically for the first time in her adult life. She was choosing herself. She was loved and seen and valued. And that was more than enough. The fire burned low. The record finished playing. The snow kept falling. And Rebecca Porter, 49 years old, divorced mother of two, amateur painter, and woman who'd finally found her courage, smiled into the darkness and felt at last at home in her own life.